no.
The technological
Much like myself.
is Mr. Flint.
Something like that.
Well, good evening, Gary.
How are we all?
We're absolutely fine. We've just gone live. I'd like to introduce the panel. Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm not sure you can hear us, can you?
Cool.
Yep.
Yep, excellent.
Yeah, I've got you.
Good man.
So we've got the great and the glorious of the Bandits and the Bears. We've got Mr. Gavin Parr.
I can hear you. Yeah, I've got you.
Good. And we've got Gary Flint. We have got the one and only George Dodds, who is the best barman on the back straight at Sheffield Park I've ever known. And we have the greatest announcer of Speedway, Mr. Steve Hayward, and your havering self. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining us. First of all, I suppose it would be fair to say, what did you think of the football tonight? Anybody want to go first?
First half an hour they were lousy, and then after that, pretty much controlled it, didn't they? I think
they did. Yeah. I thought our heat leaders were far better than theirs, so that was the end of the story, wasn't it? You know. So progressing very quickly onwards to we'll let our guests go first. Gavin, would you care to tell us a little bit about the efforts that you've gone to put together the team that you have recently announced for this forthcoming season? Because I know it's not been easy for you.
No, it hasn't, and I'm sure Gary sort of understands what we have to go through. Being new to the team management lock, I didn't really understand how complicated things could get. You have a rider, he signs, he sort of gentleman's agreement says, yep, I'll come for X amount, and then a week later he's messaging saying, oh, I can't come for that money, I need more. Yeah. So you get in, different riders approached you and said, well, I'd love to come. You know, so you say to the other lad, sorry, we haven't got the money to offer you. We'll get the other guy in. Then 3 weeks down the line, he decides that he's had a better offer off another team, and he disappears as well. And you're putting little bits of the jigsaw together, and this is what people don't understand. Yous obviously do, but they don't understand that, you know, that you get a big piece of the jigsaw, but it doesn't fit in a little hole. You know, and we just, as I say, I think I've used the sort of thing that it was just the hokey cokey. They were in, they were out, they were in again, they were out again. And then eventually, I think it was about Wednesday night, we signed our 7th rider on Wednesday night, I think Thursday morning. And I messaged Jamie and Jade on Friday morning and said, what are we going to do? I've got nothing to worry about this morning. We've actually got 7. You know, and then it just, honestly, just crazy how many times you get them, like, in riders. Certain riders are an absolute dream to deal with, and others, let's just keep it amongst that. It's been a very difficult about 10 weeks, but fingers crossed, barring disasters. I think we're there, and I think we've put together a team that certainly went down really well at our Christmas party and reveal last night. I think in what I've looked at Facebook today, everybody, you know, countrywide, different clubs seem to be, you know, a positive against the team that we've put together.
Sure. I mean, I would just sort of put this situation out there, and that is that riders that might be signed for a season, they're not guaranteed their team place for the year. Therefore, is it a case of, you know, sometimes the riders feel they need to look after themselves, and this is part of the problem, is the fact that, you know, you as you say, you've got a gentleman's agreement to sign them, but you know they're not guaranteed that team place for the whole season. Therefore, you know, you sort of wonder where the loyalties lie. Would that be fair, or is that unfair?
No, I know where you're coming from, and you've got, if a rider's not doing well, but I guess it's like having a job anywhere, isn't it? If you're not
Sure.
if you're not performing, the problem with Speedway is sometimes, and Gary will back us up on this, sometimes it's not your fault. You could be riding to your average,
Yeah.
but if one of the heat leaders isn't doing well and you can get somebody in to replace him, sometimes you're out the door and you've done nothing wrong whatsoever. You're riding to the average that we got in on, but because again, it's all about numbers. It's all about getting figures to add up, and sadly, sometimes you've got no choice but out you go. Who's got the yappy dog anyway?
I have. I'm going to get rid of her in a minute.
Are you going?
I'm just going to throw this into the room before I get rid of her. Gary, would you swap your 7 for Gavin's 7?
Oh,
What a question that is, by the way.
I think if I wanted Gavin's 7, I would have had it, just like everybody else got his team. So, no, I think I'm over the moon with my 7, and I'm sure there's going to be some nip and tuck battles, as always with the Bandits and the Bears.
For me, I think, Gavin, your 7, it's a really good 7. I think it was slightly more predictable, if you like, but I think Gary, ours is I think the Rory Schlein signing was very left field, as far as for me anyway. So, I think yours was quite predictable, Gavin. It's a really good 7, but I think ours is a bit more left field with the signing of Rory Schlein. How did that come about, Gav?
Well, yeah, it was a bit of an odd one, really. Obviously, we'd been negotiating with Bomber and seeing if we could make things work for him and his family, and Rory got in touch. He sent me a message and said that he was coming back and he fancied having a crack at Berwick, which kind of knocked me off my feet a little bit, to be honest. It wasn't what I expected in the context that I thought he was at home and he was settled, but when you look at Rory's scores at Berwick, I think it's easy to remember his time when he was at Berwick with Somerset. We obviously had issues with the start line that night.
That's right, yeah.
And he made his feelings pretty clear there, but it later transpired actually he just didn't want to ride because I think he was on dropping his average. So ironically, Somerset could get Bomber in the week after. I think if you remember that night, he ran 3 pretty bad lasts.
He ran 3 really bad last places, didn't he?
And then heat 13, he went out and smoked it, didn't he?
Yeah,
so
he did.
There was that night, and again when he come with Poole, he was Rory. He didn't set the world on fire, but at the same time, he's still got double figure scores, and obviously the 2 times before that with Ipswich, he dropped 7 points in 4 meetings. So obviously I hear what people are saying, and everyone's entitled to their opinion, but to me, he's as good a signing as Bomber, and I'm massivly excited to have him. I'd rather have him than have him against us, that is for sure, and he's a true professional, and you could come into any team in the league and be a number 1 and do a top job at that. I get what people are saying, that he's had a year out, but everyone had a year out only 2 years ago, and it's never hampered anybody there, and he's still massively active and riding in Australia anyway, so that doesn't worry me at all either. I think we've touched on Gavin's team there. I think we're going to see a lot of teams built like that. I think the 3 teams that have completed so far have all got 3 heat leaders. Granted, Leon's average isn't as high as some of the others, but you know, you look at Leon's form last year. I think he was the only one to beat Eric Chris when we were at Redcar. He was the only one to beat Charles Wright when we were at Redcar. He went to Poole and beat all their three top boys on their home track there. So, you know, numbers are a funny thing in Speedway. If Leon carries on his trajectory there, I think our top three will be as strong as any top three in the league.
I think you're right, guys. For me, I think if you look at like Gavin's top three, you've not got a massive amount of scope to increase, but obviously you've got, you'll get Thomas dropping his average a little bit. Rory, you'll probably look at leveling out where he is, but Leon, the only way is up for Leon, and I think that's the difference in our team as opposed to others. Where if you look at top three, you know, if you've got three big heat leaders, they're all, yes, their averages are higher than Leon's, but Leon's got that scoped up his average, where the other guys, they'll probably right to that average. So I think that's maybe where we'll have the advantage with going down the team build that we've gone down.
Yeah, I think so. And you know, you look at, we're gonna lose a bit off of Thomas, but we'll gain on Jonas's figure more than likely.
Yeah.
And you know, we're a super strong team at home. We know that anyway. And you know, I think our top five will be up there with anybody. I think once Jonas gets Shielfield Park dialed in, you know, the plan is just to let Nathan and Connor progress and do what they do. But we know that them two are absolute fighters as well. So I think Jonas away from home potentially will be stronger than he is at home. But yeah, you know, you look at the scoring system this year with the aggregate bonus coming in. I think that hopefully will favour us with our home track advantage. I say that with a slight smirk on my face because Gavin's here and we have we haven't beaten them for a few years, but
you'll not be surprised.
My next question to Gavin is how do you feel about that, Gavin? Obviously,
you'll not be surprised that we voted against it, will you? You know, because everybody comes to Redcar and gets at least 40 points normally. Do you know what I mean? Because everybody loves coming to Redcar. You know that the track is fair. It has, you know, it's one of those things. But to be fair, me and Jamie did sit down and worked it out. And on this year's point scoring compared to last year, we would have finished in exactly the same place in the league. So actually, it didn't have that much of a bet. We still voted against it because, as I say, I think, you know, as I say, a team comes to Redcar and 9 times out of 10, both teams end up with 40 something points. Which is, it's great for the crowd, you know what I mean? The racing's great, but as you say, when it comes to aggregate bonus points, it does mean we're going to have to work a little bit harder. But as you were saying before, though, about heat leaders, I just want to think, like, we've managed, because of the way the rolling averages, etc., and because he had a little bit of difficulty, we've got Charles Wright on a 7.29 or 7.3 average, which is meant we can build. We've been able to build with 3 heat leaders, to be fair, because Charles is an 8.5 point man at least. Do you know what I mean? But because of the way the rolling averages work, we've got him on a bit of a steal.
You've gained with that.
We've gained. Well, you certainly gained with Leon. You know my respect for Leon, Gary. You know what I mean? It's Christ. But we seem to have gained on Charles. Just because of the way the rolling average worked, etc. We managed, and that meant we could fit in three heat leaders, not the 3 heat leaders we had to start with, or what disappeared and came back. But we ended up with, I think, 3 really good heat leaders. You know.
Yeah, George, I just wanted. Sorry, Gav, I was just going to ask George. All 3 teams that have declared so far, would it be fair to say they seem a little bit top heavy?
Yeah, I mean, I think once you brought it down to 40 points, it was always going to be fairly low average reserves. I think what surely the sport's trying to do is give National League lads a chance in the 6 and 7 spots. And I think certainly both teams, Redcar and Barrett, the 6 and 7s, the 2-pointers, but they're good 2-pointers. They're not really 2-pointers. That's just their average. So it's a strange setup. It would be nicer to maybe have 2 heat leaders rather than 3 heat leaders. Maybe some of them up in the Premiership and not doubling down for easy money. But that's the way it is.
Sorry, Gary, I interrupted you, but I just wanted to get a quick opinion from George there. I mean, to me, definitely, it seems like every team is top heavy, and it's going to boil down surely to the second strings and reserves.
Yeah, you're probably right there. I think in hindsight, we should have probably gone lower with the points limit. But you know, at the time, I think when we were talking things through, obviously losing a team in Newcastle, it kind of frees up some riders. All right, Newcastle's team last year wasn't great, but obviously losing them, that frees up a few, and obviously Leicester going up as well. That's, you know, that frees up a few. I think. So yeah, it was always going to be. We definitely had to lower it from 42. I think I did watch some of Redcar's live stream last night, and they say we're watering down the product. Well, wait until you see the teams. I think you know, if rumours are true, who everybody else has signed, I think there'll be a lot of top heavy teams that it'll be back to how it used to be with 3 heat leaders and the cream of the youngsters at the bottom and pushing on and you know, your 5-6 pointers in the middle of the team, how it used to be. So
sure.
I do think we're probably still a bit high. I know we were pushing for something a little bit lower, as was Jamie at Redcar, but you know, you get the glamour clubs that don't kind of see it that way, and that's fine. That's their business model, and you know, we'll build to whatever we get given. So
Sure.
I think it's important to carry on the progression for the youngsters. You know, like Connor Coles, yeah, he's been in and out the championship for a few years now, but he's never been given a start.
Yeah.
And you know, he's kind of the boy that's just chucked in to fill gaps, and you know, he guested twice for us last year, and I was super impressed with him. 6 points at Leicester for us, and 3 points at Birmingham. So, you know, that was enough for me to give him a nod and give him a call, and obviously get him tied up. So, yeah, I think I'm super excited with what we've got. I think, you know, as Redcar said last night, probably the strongest team they've ever had built, and I think we're the same, to be honest. So yeah, it's certainly going to be an interesting season, and you know, Redcar in the prelims of the cup will be wrapping Jai up in cotton wool and going out and battering them.
As long as Graham Hunter's not the referee, we'll be all right.
He's my mate now.
Exactly.
Yeah, but every time he referees, Jai gets injured. It's a well-known fact.
That's true. And it's against Redcar.
Yeah, usually.
Yeah.
It is. And Redcar always come to us when we've got a team like taped together. You know,
when he got hurt at Oxford last season, I was a news referee. I was texting him, and it's like, "It's you again, right. You're a jinx." And he said, texted me back and said, "Yeah, no, sorry, mate."
That's it. He did say it to me after that meeting, actually. But you know, Jai got injured against Redcar in the league match, didn't he?
I did.
And then Redcar come back in the cup after we'd been to Glasgow the night before, and holy hell, how we managed to field a team that night.
I think everybody had crashed the night before, and
it was unreal.
Everybody had,
and Theo could hardly walk. I remember, you know. From our side of the pit, obviously it was like you won't get a better opportunity here. You know, like half of them couldn't walk. You were in a bit of. I think Leon had wrapped himself around the fence as well. I think, and you were all in a bit of a second-hand state.
Ironically, the only one that was fit was Nathan. And he's usually the only one that isn't fit. But yeah,
Gavin, can I just ask you about your team from the bottom up? So you've got Jake Mulford. Is that the same Jake Mulford that finished second behind Leon in the under 19?
Yes, it is indeed. And to be fair,
he seemed very impressive.
Yeah, well, he's the only one who pushed Leon anywhere near, to be fair, on the night. He's the only one who sort of, Leon had to get out the second gear, and to be fair, at times, you know what I mean? But we've watched him for a little while, you know, and then, to be fair, at the under 19s, he was the best of the rest behind Leon, obviously, you know, by far. But we wanted to keep an eye on him, and we'd said from that day that if we have to build a team with a 2-pointer, we would like this kid in. He's raw as raw can get. Last night he was like a startled rabbit in the headlights, like talking to people, and he's, you know. But I think with the likes of Danny King in the team, and he's quite good friends with Danyon, and you know he sort of just grew in confidence even last night when we were sitting talking before they were introduced. You know, and you could just see him starting to like relax and enjoy himself. And I honestly think on a bike, we watched that, I think it's Heat 10, when Nathan Ablett, who obviously had a full season in the championship, he had a couple of nibbles for the first couple of laps on the inside of Nathan. And then, you know, a lot of these kids would have just stayed there. They would have just stayed on the inside. They would have just kept away on it. And he switched to the outside and he passed them going around, I think it was bend 1 and 2 down the back straight last lap, and we just thought, you know what it is, this kid has got something about him, you know. He's quite well up on the grass track and long track scene, etc. But I just, with a 2-pointer, I think he deserved a chance at number 7, you know. And obviously we've got Jason at 6, who,
well, I was going to say James Shanes. Is Jason at 6 and James Shanes number 2, is he?
Yeah, Shane's is number 2. Yeah, Shane's average is higher. Jason, I'll admit, he just did too much last year. He raced 90, and that was with an injury to his shoulder towards the end, so he missed some matches, but he still ended up doing, I think, 97 matches. Jesus. And I just think, mid-season, he was riding at number 2 mid-season and quite often winning Heat 1. He was getting in Charles's way. Charles used to come back in the pits covered in shit, absolutely going berserk. He was like, I can't get past him. And to be fair, he was averaging 6 and 7 points a match at number 2, you know. And then I just think things got on top of him. He was riding, I think it averaged out at something like 4.5 matches a week at one stage, you know. And for a young kid, and he's washing all his own bikes. He hasn't got a team around him like some of them. He had his mum helping him with the driving, and it just got too much, and he tailed off at the end of the season. As I say, he did have a shoulder injury as well, but he's dropping the National League this year, and he's just concentrating on championship and hopefully a rising star at Kings Lynn. So the idea of building the team was that Jason could well, as we hope, be number 2 anyway very shortly. So the number 2 and the number 6 was a sort of position that we think could switch, you know.
Sure.
And I think, I think it's been well documented that the number 2 spot was Jordan Jenkins's, you know, for weeks and weeks. And we hadn't built a team without Jordan for the first 7 or 8 weeks of trying to build a team. We just expected he was our rider, he's our asset. But as things transpired, it just, you know, it didn't work out. Away he went, and we've got James Shanes in, which he just seems to have got his fire back in his belly. He's had a couple of seasons. He's quite injury prone. He's a bit like Jai in a way. It's like if you can just keep him fit on a bike, he's great. And I think that probably the thing with Jai is because they're racers. Do you know what I mean? They never know when they're beaten, and they just go to places that probably some riders wouldn't bother, you know. But at the end of the day, he'll keep the crowd entertained when he's on his bike anyway.
I was going to say about Jordan Jenkins. I mean, he's probably and George and Steve might argue with me, but for me, as a guest this year, I would say that Jordan Jenkins was the best. And I know Gary,
without a doubt.
You said I was going to say Steve Lawson. Bloody hell. Willie
That's a while ago.
Lawson
Richard
Lawson.
was our best guest points-wise, but for entertainment value. Any news on where Casper is going this year?
He's not.
Because-
He was out with Christmas do last night, but he's gone back to school.
Right.
So he really, I don't think he's last night. Yeah, he's having a year out of British Speedway while he goes. He's gone back to school, some engineering or project management or something, and then he's hoping to rekindle. He's still going to ride in Denmark, but he's hoping to rekindle in 2024, basically.
Right. Okay. Talking about Denmark, so that's you without any Danish riders. I believe there's a couple riding for Berwick that maybe some of the other guests would like to comment on. Jonas and the return of the fantastic Thomas Jorgensen, TJ.
Yeah, for me, good to see TJ back. Yeah, it's a bit of a farce. He has to come back in on that average he's coming in on, but it is what it is. And you know, did that put you off at all, Gary, signing him, or did you want to sign him anyway?
We've been in touch with him quite a lot over various seasons, and you know, he's also a personal friend of mine from when I used to mechanic for him and stuff like that. And he wanted to give Poland a bash, so you know, fair play to him. He he took a big gamble. He signed for Gdansk last year, and to be fair, the riders that they had, the foreign riders that they had, he wasn't a proven Polish rider, so he was never going to get in there. He was never going to put Rasser out, and I can't remember the other foreigner that had. I think it might have been Timo Latti, but if he had went to the second division, then he'd have probably got to ride every week. I know he did do a few meetings for Dargapos, but unless you're out there all the time, it's difficult. You know, that it's just completely different as we've all seen on the telly. So he made that choice. So you know, you've got to back him and admire him for having a crack. It didn't work out for him, and here he is back at Berwick. But you know, I think everyone will remember when he come with Scunthorpe in 2021. He was probably the most exciting visitor we had. He figured out the way that the track alterations had been done early on, and he was super exciting. We absolutely hammered Scunny that night, and I think Thomas scored more than half the points. So entertainment value, I think he'll be as good as Bomber was. So yeah, everyone's saying the average that he's coming in on that average because he earns it in the top league. So you know, sub 6.5 point average in the top league, and you look at some riders that are lower, Josh Pickering, things like that. He's obviously doing all right. So
good point.
You know, I think 9.5 points is high, but it could be higher. It's obviously going to be difficult for him to maintain that average, but I anticipate him being not far off it. I reckon he'll be high 8s anyway. So like Gav touched on earlier, we're all building to numbers. Ironically, we've got our team's 40 dead, so I think we've utilised our points fantastically, and like I said earlier, I think we've got 3 strong heat leaders, and you know, Jai will be pushing for one of them heat leader spots, and Jonas is certainly going to be the same, as will Nathan and Connor. You know, they'll not want to be at reserve all year. So
I think if you look at Jonas especially, I think he's obviously coming in on his assessed 5, but you're looking at him, he's got to be 6.5. I think he's averaging about 6.5, Gary.
7.5.
He is,
7.5.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. And you know, let's not forget, it took him a lot of weeks before he won his first race at Shieldfield.
Yeah,
but he won his first race at every other track quite convincingly. So you know, I think he put a bit too much pressure on himself in SGP2, and that showed. But when he comes into the team environment, and especially at Berwick, we've all seen how he mingles with the fans, and when he's in the black and gold after, he's bought into what we do so fast, and I'm excited to see where it goes for him. He's committed his long-term future to us, and we'll do the same with him. So, it's exciting to think that, maybe 3 or 4 years' time, we could have him and Leon spearheading the team and being them top boys. So, it's cool.
Fantastic. Gavin, I wanted to ask you, and I do apologise because I was busy last night, so I never saw the live Facebook stream. Who's the skipper of the Red Car Bays? I would guess it's probably Charles Wright, but I would like you to let me know for sure.
No, it will stay as Charles Wright. Will stay as skipper.
Yes.
100%. He's a Red Car asset. He's been there 5 years, 4 years. He's just signed a 2-year deal to stay there. Not just next season, but 2024 as well. He is Red Car through and through in the skipper. But to be fair, Danny King is an out and out skipper as well. He's skippered Pool the last 2 years to win everything that they've won. And Danny was asked last night, would it take the pressure off him? Would it, not being captain? But Danny's Danny. Danny will be up and down those pits helping everybody out just the way Danny does. But the good thing is Danny has the experience and everything to also help Charles out. Do you know what I mean? Where the others would look at Charles and maybe he's not saying nothing or whatever. Danny has been there, done that, worn the T-shirt several times, and he'll help the lot of them out, So it's going to be Charles on paper, but I wouldn't be surprised if the pair of them just muck in. You know what I mean? To be fair, these are all professional speed riders. I know, you know what I mean. They know what they should be doing. Obviously, on the nights it doesn't always work, and we know that. But they're all there to help each other. And if last night's anything to go by, the atmosphere playing table tennis beforehand, it's going to be a great team atmosphere.
Sure. Okay, same question to Steve and George. Your thoughts, and Gary, you are excluded from answering this question. Your thoughts on Leon being captain, skipper of the Bandits. I've got my own thoughts on that, and they are based on the fact that when Nathan Stoneman came off in that big crash, first on the scene was none other than Leon, helping getting Nathan sorted, the bike sorted. But your thoughts on Leon as skipper? He's, at 19 years old, that's a really big pressure on his shoulders, but he's got bloody big shoulders.
Yeah, for me, for me personally, I don't have an issue with it. I think Leon is, he knows the Berwick ethos. I mean, God Almighty, he's been involved with the club most of his life. So, he's only 19, granted, but he knows the ethos of the Bandits through and through. And you know what? Who better? You want somebody that knows that. He's a little gobshite, and he's not going to be quiet in those pits. If you look at captains we've had over the past, and your Kevin Doolans and people like that, and your Granties, but then you look at people like Aaron, who's a lot quieter. I think you're not going to get that with Leon. Leon, for me, will be at the forefront of that team and driving them on. And I think he's a good choice because he knows that Bandits ethos. I don't know what you think, George, but that's my opinion, certainly.
Yeah, I think last couple of seasons, it's been a case of start of every season, Leon's had a new challenge. First up is he good enough to be number 7 in the championship? Then is he good enough to get into the team? Then can he hold that? Then can he improve on that? Then can he do it at GP2 level? And every time the answer's been yes. And he's moved on, he's moved up. The captaincy, I think he's very proud of it as well. It's it's not just Gary, it's Scott, it's Jamie. They've all grown up together, isn't it? It's the Berwick boys running Berwick Speedway in Berwick. Berwick lad now is captain, and between him and Gary, they've now captained 2 of Berwick's 3 sporting teams. And we're only a little place. Yeah, it takes a bit of doing that. I think he has a lot of pride in his club, and I think that just it feeds through to others as well. That they're not just coming here to earn a bit of money. It's more important than that. The club is more important than just somewhere to earn a few bob on a Saturday night. And I think he thrives on the pressure, and I think it's another little bit of added pressure to just push him on. And Rory Schleine's not a bad guy to have going in the background if he needs a bit of advice from anyone either.
You know, can I pop in here as well? Like,
Gary.
obviously,
Oh yes, sorry, Gavin. Yeah. Gary.
yeah. I had Leon as a guest a couple of times last season. Do you know what I mean? He came down to Plymouth, bless him, for me. Probably Gary was pulling his hair out and probably calling us all the names under the sun. But he left Wolverhampton one night last season, and he was sitting having some food, ready to drive back home. And I messaged him. We'd lost Charles Wright that night on the telly. He'd crashed down the back straight, and I was desperate for a guest for Plymouth the day after. And I tried Danny King. Danny was on the telly at the time commentating, and I was texting him, going, Danny, you've got a rifle, we've lost Charles. And anyway, I collared Leon, and he was in some Burger King or something, having some food. And I went, Leon, I'm desperate. I need a guest tomorrow night at Plymouth. And he straight away, it was like, Gav, can you get us a hotel? I'll be there for you. I'll do it. Do you know what I mean? And that just typifies what Leon is about, is that, you know, he's just 110% committed, and obviously committed to the Berwick cause without question. And I couldn't see anybody in that team. Yeah, Rory, fair enough, been around, worn the T-shirts, a bit like Danny, but somebody who understands what Berwick is about. Gary won't mind us saying it, a small club like Redcar, or a small club, but with a massive heart. Yeah. And Leon has got everything that club needs to be as a captain, you know. And yeah, he's still learning, and he's still going to make mistakes. You know, that's just part of life, part of learning. But you'll not get anybody in. I had him in the pits, and he was helping people. He was out on track, getting people who've crashed, and it's just the way he is. And I'm not just saying that because Gary's in the screen as well, but it's just the type of kid he is. Simple as, you know what I mean. I sponsored him last year, you know what I mean, and I love the kid to bits. I do. He's absolutely what Berwick need as just that figure, you know. And no qualms about him being your skipper, without doubt.
Yeah, I think you know what. Go on. Sorry.
No, Gary. I'm going to shut up and let you talk, and let the others who've heard plenty from me.
Yeah, I think you know, everything that everyone said there is absolutely right. I think you know, he's a Berwick kid. He's obviously in quite a privileged position that he can see what goes on at the club. He knows what it means to me. He knows what it means to Scott and Jamie and Stevie and all the fans. You know, he is a very passionate boy. I think. Like Gav says, you know, it doesn't matter who he rides for. He wants to go and do well for that race jacket that he's got on. And, you know, we had it last year in Bomber. You know, if the boys can't be inspired by somebody going out there and giving it the absolute nuts to win a race for that club that they've got on their race jacket, then you've got no chance of being inspired by anybody. You know, George has been in and around the pit for most of the season, and he knows how vocal he is. You know, on track walk, he's always vocal, and in team meetings, he's always vocal. So I think it was more than natural step for him. I think age is just a number. And you're right in what everyone's saying. You know, he'll make mistakes, just like Rory Schlein will, and just like Danny King and Charles Wright will. So, yeah, I think it's... you know, personally, I say it all the time. I obviously struggle about speaking about Leon in a personal tense, but he is the only man in that team for the job, and he's probably the only one that I'd want to lead my team into battle, like we're going to have to be every Saturday and when we're away, you know. So he's, I think we'll we'll maybe cop a bit of flack for it, but who gives a shit? It's up to us what we do as a club, and we think we've got it 100% right. So, we kind of struggled to fill a gap that Kevin left when he retired. But yeah, I think the closest we'll get to Kevin will be Leon.
I think you're always going to struggle to replace somebody like Kevin Doolan, the type of guy he was. But for me, it was a really good insight from Gav, looking at it from the outside and somebody that's not involved with it as to what he's like. I mean, I'm friends with some guys from Wolves, and obviously Leon Rydnet, and he's massively highly thought of amongst the Wolves team and the Wolves fans as well. So that what Gav said is kind of sort of backed up what they've been saying about him as well. And I think it's right what you say, Gaz. He's the natural choice, I think, to lead that team into battle.
Yeah, I think so. And I obviously speak to a lot of people that are involved in running clubs and other team managers. Mark Phillips at Plymouth used him a few times, and he was blown away by it. Gary May, and the other one, Peter Schrock. He went up to Edinburgh to guest at number one for them, and he was by far the best rider on the night.
Yeah, he was.
And Peter couldn't believe the way that he applies himself. He's not just there to pick up an extra paycheck. He genuinely wants to do well for who he rides for. So credit to him. I think he's grown up a lot in the last year by doing everything that he had to do by himself. He wanted to do that. He was like, he said to me at the start of the year, this is the way I'm going to go. And I'll be honest, I thought it was a terrible idea. And he went and done it. And yeah, sometimes he struggled, but a lot of the time he didn't. So, fair play to him. He's learnt from that. He's going to have somebody working for him full time next year, and that'll only make him relax a bit more. He'll not be so fatigued and a mental kind of way. He knows that then he can go to the track. He knows his bikes will be spot on, and everything will do. Everything will be done properly, so he can then focus on his racing even more than what he did. And I know he wants to make a big push for the under-21s this year, on the world stage as opposed to the British thing. And it's a super exciting time for him. And I know he's got his operation in a couple of weeks' time to get his shoulder sorted, and he's already looking to get his kit sorted here and abroad for the season, so he doesn't have to think about that when he's laid up with his arm in a sling.
Can I just ask Gary? The thing is with having Leon as a bandit, it's just every promoter's dream. And I suppose we can't begrudge Glasgow signing Ace Piper and the way they promoted him.
Yeah, for sure. And every rider's different, and Gav will tell you that as well. He's been involved in a short space of time, and he's had a torrid time of it. What a rude awakening to come into it. And every rider has their own thought process and stuff like that, and what works for one won't work for the other. And good luck to Ace. I think he's a great kid, and we still care a lot about him. Once a bandit, always a bandit, and I think he'll do all right there. Probably the way Glasgow's track is, run on the slicker side, will probably benefit him better than we run a championship match. And there's so many variables when it comes down to it, that anything can happen, and that door will always be open for Ace. I'm sure he'd probably like to come back and have another crack at Berwick at some time when it's right for him. Sure. And we'll certainly greet that with open ears and see what we can do around that.
Sure. And Gavin, same question to you regarding Louis Kerr, who is actually the cousin of a very good friend of mine. Steve is a member of 262 here in Galashiels, so it's a very small world, very small world. But Gav, your thoughts on losing Louis Kerr to Oxford?
Yeah, it was a massive blow. We
Yeah.
thought we'd done a deal with Louis. Louis, to be fair, of last year's team, we would have had six. We would have had six of them back.
Yeah.
You know, and we thought we were going to be close to having six of them back, but sadly,
Sure.
we just can't compete with some of the money that's been thrown. And I've got no disrespect on Louis at all. I love him to bits. You know, this year when I was team manager, like I remember a little incident that happened at Leicester where Charles had his blinkers on and sort of run Louis a little bit wide, and let's say Louis ended up falling off. And my baptism of fire as a team manager, I ended up with a UN peacekeeping band on my arm, you know, that Louis was going to kill Charles, simple as, you know, and I had to sort of calm the situation down and go and talk to Louis and put my arm around him. And, you know, Charles isn't really a bad lad. He just doesn't look sometimes, you know. And anyway, we got him calmed down, and he went out in 13 and 15 and beat Morris and Worrell. So he was all of a sudden, by the end of it, he was happy again. So Louis was back. We thought we'd done a deal, but sadly then, you know, other teams who've got more money than us came in and offered him more money. Louis different to say Jordan in a way. Louis got a mortgage, he's got a wife, he's got 2 kids. You know, it's basically it's money that Louis, although he writes for the passion of the sport, he also money is a big thing. And sadly, yeah, we just lost out to Oxford, and away he went. So we started the merry-go-round, and then we had a number one come straight on, and like he was a genuine number one, and he agreed terms within about a day at the most. Only for 3 weeks down the line for him to be the same thing happen, and he's gone off to pastures new further down south. Nearly as far south as you can get, but I don't want to say anything else really. But you know, and I think Gaz probably has the same. We can't. We're run on a tight budget. You know, we've got 2 brothers who own the club, and they do brilliant. Honestly, the pair of them do brilliant. But we know what budget we've got, and sadly, some of the clubs in the Championship at the moment just seem to be paying crazy amounts of money to riders, which, you know, when they were agreeing and they were coming to you for X amount, so then they're getting offered Y. You know, it's crazy because they were going to ride for X until Y was offered. So it's just a little bit silly that you don't need to be offering that. You know, they were going to ride anyway, and they were going to ride for X. So. But I guess that's just the sport, and it's something I've learned over these last 6, 8, 10 weeks that, you know what it is, it's just part and parcel, you know.
I think, Gav, you've got to look at work. You've got to look at Workington back in 2018.
Right.
You just have to look at that, and I think that sums up what you just said. You've got to work to your budget and be sustainable, because you can't just go and win 3 trophies and then that's you done. Gone.
Yep.
You know, and I think that's a sensible way to go, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's frustrating, honestly. It's massively frustrating when you think you've got a team, and as I say, it's all about jigsaw pieces, isn't it? Because it's not just like football where you would replace your striker with another striker or whatever, because all of a sudden when that guy drops out and you've already filled 2 places because he's in it, and then he drops out, and all of a sudden those 2 places below, one of those pieces of the jigsaw is a bit big because we need it smaller to fit a bigger bit, you know. Never mind. Anyway, you don't
rather you than me, mate. Rather you than me.
You don't want to listen to me and Gaz whinge all night, but you know, let's stay positive. Let's stay positive.
And George, your thoughts on Ace going to Glasgow? I had it on good authority from Mr. Barry that Ace is going to be our reserve this coming season, and Mr. Barry, you know, he knows a lot about Speedway, but he's not got a crystal ball.
Isn't it unbelievable that Dick could ever be wrong about anything?
Exactly.
About something, never.
I think. I mean, I said I really don't know. I don't know what the ins and outs were.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it's a huge gamble because it's a huge step for a 16-year-old. I mean, 1 year in the National League, he did an awful lot better than I thought he would in the National League last year. But he was still very raw. Particularly his gating was a bit random at times. And that could come back to haunt you in the Championship. But you hope Glasgow treat him kindly. They've not always got a reputation for being very patient with 6s and 7s. But, I think you said before we can't begrudge Glasgow anything. Well, I think we can always begrudge Glasgow a lot. They do it their way, don't they? And well, okay, that may be a good way. That may not be a good way. It certainly trickles down. Be interesting to see where he ends up, other than Glasgow next year.
Yeah, and also there's been a bit of speculation as to where Mr. Piper Senior might end up next year. And any news on?
Not
Theo?
far away from Ace, I would have thought, because you need to drive him everywhere.
Yeah, I would have thought. Yeah.
I honestly don't even know whether Theo's still planning to ride next year in Britain.
Well, it was just that if I presume that that there's a lot of riders that are realising, based on the Greg Hancock sort of scenario, that you've still got a lot of years left. I mean, Chris Harris now turns 40. I think Rory Schlein is coming up for 38, 39. Is that right, Gary?
Yeah, 38 at the moment, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
doesn't seem very old to me, Paul. I must admit.
No, I messaged Aaron Summers and asked him about his resurgence last season, having retired and spent what was it, sort of 6-9 months away from the sport. He came back rejuvenated, and obviously we hope that Rory will do the same for the Bandits, and just realise what he's missing. But I just wanted to finish off by I had this conversation with the other boys from the Shouty brothers from the live chat, and it was a question as to who of the last, I don't know, you can go back 30 years if you like, who would be the riders that would be if the Shouty brothers, Marty and James, were around 30 years ago, who would be the ones that they would say unbelievable, and the second, what are you doing to me? Who would be the Berwick and the Red Car riders that would inspire that in you? You can go back 30 years.
Oh, blimey. I think I'll
there you go.
I think I'll go back to Mike Hiftel.
Right. Only 30 years.
More than 30, George.
Only 30 years.
His grandma used to, his auntie lived in my street in Newcastle, believe it or not. She had a pitch. I remember she had a pitch. I did some stupid, I don't know if it was, this is how long ago it was. I think I was like Club Bob a Job or something. You remember that type of thing? And you went in and there was a picture of Mike Hiftel on a mantelpiece thing, and you go like, Speedway, right? Oh yeah, it was his auntie or something. Yeah, how bizarre. But yeah, Mike Hiftel.
So Gavin, who would be your Red Car Bears unbelievable rider, the most fantastic rider you've ever seen at Red Car?
The thing is, Paul, I should say no more. I wasn't a Red Car fan 30 years ago, was I?
I'm just saying.
I wasn't a Red Car fan 10 years ago, was I? Let's be fair.
Okay, then.
I was born and bred in the black and white place, wasn't I?
Okay.
I've only been to Red Car the last 8 years, really. I think 8 years since Kev K gave us a call and said, Gav, do you fancy coming and riding for the Northern Development League team? and sadly, they never got rid of us since. I've been stuck since.
All right, all right.
You can
Well,
name
yeah, my
former
time with
Cleveland
Newcastle
Bays
was-
as well if you want.
You what?
You can name former Cleveland Bays if you want as well.
Yeah.
So what are we talking? 30 years ago, it would have been around.
No.
30 years ago.
In the last 30 years, in the last
Right.
30, like over the course of the last 30 years,
At Newcastle, I would have. Had to
or
go and
Newcastle and Middlesbrough.
Yeah,
and,
David Barge was my absolute hero. I loved David Barge.
Right. Okay.
I think he wasn't one of the posers. He didn't sort of. David just got on and did his job, and every season it wasn't nearly a 9 point. You know, you go back to the 70s, like Tom Owen was my absolute idol. 9 years up the trot, he had a 10-point average or something in the National League. You wouldn't get that these days, I know, because obviously without bonus and all that. But 9 years up the trot, he had a 10-point average. Now, that is something special, you've got to say, you know. And then, as I say, at Redcar or Teesside or Middlesbrough, they've had a couple of different names.
Yeah.
The likes of Steve Wilcock was absolutely phenomenal. You know, he was a National League #1 for a few seasons. And he was a true legend and a true hero down in Middlesbrough. Jeff Pusey was another. Mark Courtney, you know, like
I was going to ask if Mark Courtney would figure, because he's my all-time Berwick Bandits #1. Apart from
mine as well.
But, you know,
definitely Mark, and obviously you couldn't go past Gary Havelock, can you? Really? You know what I mean? Teesside born and bred, then a world champion as well. You know, so I think the Northeast in general have had some really decent riders over the years. Even though we've never been the biggest clubs, we've never been in the elite leagues and whatever else, British leagues, or apart from the Berwick Loft days with what was he called?
Exactly.
Terry Lindsay.
You know, but
Terry.
But I remember that first match when Jimmy Nilsson and Kelvin Tatum. I think I don't know. It was like crazy, but then he disappeared, didn't he? He went away somewhere, didn't he? With quite a bit of
went away.
Yeah, literally.
he was the first Gavin guy, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah. I was just going to say though, Gary, that from the point of view of the rider that wasn't necessarily the hardest. We'll come on to that, and the best point scorer, but the one that excited you the most round the track that you saw. Who was the one? I'll be honest, like it's when it comes to Shieldfield Park, it's the Lee Complin Award.
Yeah.
Who was the guy that knew how to ride that track like nobody else could ride that track?
I would say at Newcastle, I would say Bjarne Pedersen. Bjarne Pedersen in his day at Newcastle was just a little bit special. You know, he was probably the second season. He was probably a little bit above his station. Really, it was. You know, he was probably a bit too good. Or I remember Nicky Pedersen making his debut for Newcastle. I think it was actually at Berwick in a pre-season time tweed trophy challenge or something. And I went up, and this guy came with his sort of orange bike and his posh leathers, and it was like wow. And he only stayed around for one season, Nicky, but he was pretty special as well. But I think
Sorry, I must have interrupted you then.
I think, for me, I think as a team manager now, you look back at our teams of the past. I think the ultimate professional from let's call it my era would have been Paul Bentley.
Yeah.
Banger was just unreal, you know, and a great captain as well. And then, you know, the guy that you'd shut your eyes for all the time would be Freddie Stevenson.
Well, Gino Franchetti.
Well, yeah, there's him as well.
He was a bit mad.
He certainly was.
I mean, I was going to ask about who would be the hard as nails, and let's take Rob Grant out of this by saying we give the award of hard as nails award, subtitle the Rob Grant Award. Who would be the hard as nails in the both the Newcastle Red Car and the Berwick team? I think I know
Berwick
who's going to
team.
be. I think who's going to be the Berwick team.
Berwick's got to be
Rob
Michael
Grant Award.
Makovsky.
It has to be, doesn't it?
It has to be Michael. Has to be Michael. It was just unbelievable. But you couldn't meet a nicer, softer guy
I know.
off the track. Definitely Michael.
I think back
George?
in the day.
Oh, that's so jam.
Yeah, back in the day, I think Newcastle, I would go even a bit further back, but I don't know if any of you remember a guy called Graham Stapleton. He was a New Zealander who came across.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. I remember him having a little, let's say, altercation with a guy at Ellesmere on the pit gate, because the guy on the pit gate didn't know who he was and wouldn't let him in. Anyway, and Stape had a little bit of an altercation. We had to run rider replacement for him because he didn't realise that this guy on the gate was a professional wrestler. And he filled him in, and Stape wasn't fit enough to ride afterwards. But he just used to bounce off wooden fencing as if it didn't. Obviously, before the days of air fences, etc.
Yeah.
And he used to just bounce off wooden fencing for fun. He was an absolute great. I remember Brian Havelock trying to fill him in at the pit. He'd done something to him as well. He did something to everybody. And Steve had a full face helmet at the time, and Brian was trying to punch him with his full face helmet on. It was he was certainly a character, but he was hard as nails, basically, you know.
Yeah, I think same era, but only very, very briefly a Bandit, tragically, was Jack Millen, who was an absolute nutcase.
Yeah, of course. Crazy Jack.
I mean, he rode with broken legs, and he broke his knee as well, and everything. He headbutted a starting gate at full speed once and snapped it in two. And, absolute lunatic, but not a bad rider, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So why does Mikkel Makovsky, or let's give his proper name, Supermac, how does he qualify? He's both the Berwick #1 scorer of all time. He's the highest point scorer of all time. How does he qualify as the hardest nut of all? Because as you both pointed out, he was the nicest fella off the track you could possibly hope to meet.
I think when he pulled a helmet on it, he was just like a totally different person, wasn't he? He was just completely different, and he was just as hard as nails, and nobody would get the better of him. And that was just the type of guy he was. His will to win was just unbelievable, and do it for the Bandits' cause. Obviously, he came over here, and nobody knew who he was, and he just endeared himself to the fans and never rode for anybody else apart from the Bandits. And he was just, it was just like a different guy when he got on that track. And what a rider he was.
Well, I would ask you, George, I mean, Mikkel Makovsky, Supermac, did actually guest regularly for other teams, and he was absolutely phenomenal as a guest animal for the other teams, wasn't he?
I'll be honest. He was of an era where I wasn't watching the sport. I was in the Northwest at the time, and not actually. I mean, I knew of him. I knew of his scoring, but I think I only saw him ride a couple of times. And Berwick away from home were never the best way to judge a rider, a Berwick rider at Rye House or somewhere like that. It's not a fair judge of their ability. So not in my era, I'm afraid.
No, I always remember he was interviewed having fetched off Sam Ermolenko in in some sort of World Cup match, and of course, as far as the Shouty brothers are concerned, you know, and Bartosz and the rest of the crew from the what I call not the last laugh, they hold obviously Sam Ermolenko in the highest regards when it comes to broadcasting qualities, and yeah, exactly, and you know, it was Mikkel Makovsky that got involved in a incident with Sam Ermolenko in a World Cup match, and I remember thinking then, that guy's a nutter. And I remember going down to Newport many a time with my dad, who lived in Cheltenham, and I would pick him up, and we would go down to Newport. And the very first time we went to Newport, and it was Adrian, Pepe, and Mikko Markovsky, were all three of them in the team, and we won at Newport. And even my dad, who had never seen Speedway before, nicknamed him Mad Mick, because he was just like so like energetic and wild on the bike. It was just fantastic to watch.
It can get to them at times, because I don't know if we remember, but a while back is when Kelvin wound down his career at Arena. He was on a live Sky match at Swindon, and he was shaking fists, and might even have been Alan Rossiter who's still riding against, and they're trying to put each other through the fence. And you think neither of them particularly had a reputation, but at times everybody seems to manage to lose their
I don't know, Rossiter had a bit of a
a
reputation back in the late 80s when he rode for Poole, if I remember rightly.
He did, didn't he? Yeah.
Anyway, Gavin, any other Newcastle or Redcar riders that would meet the Rob Grant
Like
award for hard as nails,
I think,
like Mikko Markovsky?
do you know what it is? I think the one thing about the sport now, and you probably all agree, is that we don't have those characters anymore. You know, I think it's frowned upon a lot more now in referees. You know, get the fine books out so quickly these days. You know, people get fined. Like, I remember seeing riders storming referees' boxes and the crowd going mad, and punch-ups at the pits gate and things. And you know, and I'm not expecting it to turn back into WWE wrestling or some staged load of rubbish, but it's all stopped now, and those characters have stopped. You know, like, name a character now. Who, as you say, you're talking about Markovsky, and we're talking about people like that, and now that there's not. I don't know if the racing's a lot fairer. The bikes are so fast, you haven't got time to do what you did in them days. But you know, it's probably another part of how the sport is sadly like it is because those in the interaction with the crowd. You know, we luckily at Redcon, I think we've got one of the most passionate bunch of fans that you'll ever get. You know, they sing songs like football crowds and stuff, which is amazing. You know, it's brilliant, but it's not sort of encouraged. I think it's more of a sort of like fans coming and looking at, well, what are they doing? You know, and I just think the sport's lost a little bit of what it had. As in, as you say, when a rider used to storm along through the crowd, and the crowd would be booing, and he'd be sticking his fingers up and everything, you know. And it might not always be the sort of, you know, the family crowd that you want, but it certainly got crowds interested. You know, Dick Barry, I remember when we used to come up in the 70s, you know, Dick Barry would be winding the crowd up, something rotten the opposition crowd. He's not really, he doesn't do that anymore. And I think that's probably because he's not allowed to. I think the Speedway authorities would be just jumping on his back, you know, and it just, as I say, it's become a little bit too, I don't know what, nicey, is that the wrong words? I don't know, but, you know, and I think the same with the riders. Yeah, there's hard riders out there, you know, there's riders that won't give an inch, but as I say, the characters of the past that we can talk about, I don't think they're allowed to express themselves like they used to, you know.
No, I don't think they are. Gavin, I agree with you. You don't get that anymore. That they're like, I mean, when Brett Saunders used to come to Berrington with Edinburgh, and obviously a former Bandit, he used to get absolute pelters from the Bandits, and you just don't get that anymore, do you?
Yeah, nah. Maybe it's because riders don't often stay at clubs for long periods of time like they used to. You know, there's not often a rider gets to sort of 4 or 5 seasons now, where in the past testimonials used to be 10 years at the same club, didn't it?
Yeah,
Not sort of 10 years in the sport and things, or 10 years under the same ownership. You've rode for 8 different clubs, but because you've been owned by the same person, you know, in the days gone by, a testimonial was 10 years at the same club. You know,
Yeah.
there was a number of those happened, didn't there? You know,
Oh, yeah.
now, and whether that's another reason why, I don't know. You know, there's a million. I'm not going to sit here and slag the sport. There's a million positives compared to the past as well. But I just think those little things about, you know, losing its identity a little bit with the fans, we all need as a collective. We need to bring them back because, as I say, without the fans, we haven't got clubs. Simple as. You know, we've got no Speedway without fans, and for some reason, nearly every club, those fans is getting smaller and smaller, and the age limit's getting higher and higher. You know, we need some way of really interacting, getting the youngsters involved in Speedway, and getting the youngsters going on to their mum and dads and going, I want to go to the Speedway, I want to go to Shieldfield, I want to go to, you know, Redcar, I want to go wherever. At the minute, you look along the crowds at just about every track, and the average age must be about 60. You know,
it must be now. I mean, yeah, you look at you do get a certain amount of kids coming, but it's like you say, the average age is going up and up and up and up. You know, when I started getting involved, when I was sort of in my early teens, you know, back in the mid 80s, you know, there was loads of us going then, but then you drift away. Luckily enough, I've come back to it and got involved, but you're just not getting that now, are you?
No, and you know the thing I blame as well, and it might sound a bit stupid. I'm getting on my soapbox here, but it's kids have got a lot more to do now as well. You know, when I was young, like we didn't have school, but the only time you ever played football was for the school. If you were good enough to play for the school, you played for and that was about 11-year-old onwards. You know, 10, 11, you would play for the school team. Then you would go into high school. If you were good enough, you would go on to play for Northumberland boys, Newcastle boys, whatever. You know, now they're starting football at 3 and 4-year-old.
Yeah,
and that means, Dad, it costs a fortune. My 2 kids played cricket to a reasonable level, and it costs us a fortune in subs every week for cricket. Then, you know, like yearly subs, and these dads, they haven't got the time to think about Speedway and stuff because they've got little Joe who's 4. He's got to be at football at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning or whatever it may be, and then he's playing in a Northumberland league which could send him 80 miles away from home, you know, and he's 4 or 5-year-old, and this as well is impacting, I think, on sports as a whole. It's not just Speedway. You know, you look at every sport. The crowds are down. Even football, the crowds are down. Yes, you're still getting thousands, but they're still down. You know, and I just think there's a lot more for it to compete against as a sport. I haven't got this magic wand. I don't think anybody's got the magic wand, but we all realise that something needs to be done before it's probably too late. You know.
Yeah.
Listen, gentlemen, I've kept you far longer than I anticipated. We are now up to. I'm going to see. Where's the clock? I can't see the clock.
I think it's 1 hour 12. I think we're supposed to go for an hour.
Yeah, 1 hour 12. Yeah. And I would like to very much thank, in reverse order, George. You do a fantastic job of keeping everybody informed in Berwick about the. Not just Berwick, sorry, in keeping the Berwick Bandits community informed of everything that's going on. I would like to thank you very much. Steve Hayward, you're just a fantastic guy. You're a past Mason, so therefore you must be a fantastic guy. And I do not hold anything back there whatsoever. You must be a fantastic fella. And I hope to meet you in person at a lodge somewhere. And we will show Leon exactly how to perform a handshake without falling off a bike.
Yes, we shall.
Gavin, absolutely pleasure to get you to join us. I mean, I must admit, as a Berwick Bandit fan, when we were out of the various tournaments last season, obviously my allegiances went towards yourself.
Oh, thank you, Paul. Honestly, any time.
And the Bears, because you know you are our nearest rivals. You might be our nearest, but you also are our dearest.
Yeah, thank you, Paul, and thanks very much for having us. Honestly, it's a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Anytime, it's great. I love Berwick as a club as well. You know, I've visited hundreds of times. I've stood
I
on
know. I was had
stood
a
on that back straight.
good chat with you
Couple of
against
bottles.
Scunthorpe, and we had a good old blather, didn't we?
Yeah, definitely. Any time, by all means, just give me a shout, Paul. Anytime.
Thanks. And Steve, we'll catch you again soon.
Yeah, we'll
Cheers,
speak to you
lads.
soon. Cheers. Thanks, Gab.
Take care. Cheers, pal. Bye for
Take
now.
care.
Bye bye.
Bye for now. Bye bye.